Okay. Okay, welcome everyone. This is the long-awaited topic. Now, for those who, which I think is most, if not all of you here, who are also in our Thursday night Gemara shir, you will remember that we learned in Gemara that Reishu ben Levi says that women are chayiv in Mikra Megillah. Now, at the time, I said, look, I don't want to get too sidetracked. We got ground to cover. We took a peek at one of the Tosasim on the side, but that's going to be our topic for tonight. And as I always like to point out, I like to coin the term, the women and principle. You guys remember that one? Marina remembers that one. The women and principle goes as follows. Let's say I was going to give a shir. The topic of the shir was the mitzvah of shofar. So, I guess maybe we'll have some of the same people, show up as usual. I love all you guys, all of the people, the masmidim who are always here. But, if I was giving it somewhere else, maybe 3.5 people would show up to the shir. But if I don't call it the mitzvah shofar, but I append to the title, women and the mitzvah of shofar, all of a sudden, all the tickets get sold out. People are breaking down the door to get in. They want to hear this shir because then it becomes a social issue shir, potentially. So I did not deliberately mean to make this into a social issue shir, but if one more person shows up tonight because of it, I guess at least they're learning Torah. So our topic for tonight is women and the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah. So I didn't just
let me go on.
Oh, wow. Already a question.
I hope you didn't use your left hand to bang into the door.
Yeah, well, hopefully not.
Yeah,
No, I mean, they think it's an inflammation or tendonitis or something, but God willing, give me some medicine, should be fine. I might be slower to responding to emails and such because I'm using my right hand mostly, but Baruch Hashem, out of all the things that can happen to you in life, I think this is manageable. Thank you for your concern. So let's go to our shir. I will use screen share. I have so much experience I know from my from this past Wednesday at the Women's Sisterhood event where, we held the Monday night shir on Wednesday afternoon. That's what I like to say, but it's, hey, more Torah, the better. So, okay, let's take a look. Let's go to our source sheet. Let's see if I could center it a little more. No. Okay. So here is source number one that we are looking at, Rabosai. This is a source that you should be familiar with from our Gemara. You see, Megillah 4a, Dalet Amud Aleph. Va'amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Nashim chayavos b'mikra Megillah. Women are obligated in the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah. She'af hein hayubosones, for they too were involved in the miracle. Now we have a few questions that I will raise from here. Question number one that you want to think about. By the way, if anyone's looking, why I have some Christian definition questions and Johnny Cash up here. I was asked to write an essay for a tradition about something from culture that Jews could learn from, and I picked Johnny Cash's cover of Hurt. So that's what I'm writing about. So now you can see why. Now you know why all these tabs exist up here, but you could ignore them for now. Okay, not pertinent to our shir, but something, God willing, that will come out in February. Now here's the question. Women are obligated in the mitzvah Megillah, but are they obligated to the same extent as men are? What do I mean by that? Well, here's the thing. If I want to be motzi somebody, I want to make kiddush for someone, and I want to make people listening to that kiddush included in my bracha. Well, if I am a child, if I'm under the age of 13 and I want to include an adult, I cannot help that adult discharge their obligation of kiddush because we don't have the same level of obligation. That adult is really chayiv in the mitzvah. I, a katan, a little child, I'm only obligated on maybe a rabbinic level, maybe not at all, to be making that bracha. So it's a general principle in halacha. You need to be at least at the same level of obligation in order to include the person that you want to be included in here. So this is the question. If women do not share the same degree as obligation as men, then women might not be able to include men when they lane. Also, a second question, if women cannot lane for men, can women lane for other women? I don't know if I get into trouble here. Possibly, but we're going to see some opinions that say maybe not even that. Maybe women should only be going to hearing men lane and shouldn't be going to hear women lane. So we're going to consider all possibilities tonight. One other question for us to consider is the language over here. She'av hein hayu ba'oso hanes, that they too were included in the miracle. Think about just in the back of your head for now, what role did women play? Is it that women were involved in bringing about the salvation, or were the women they were saved the same way men were spared from being killed by Haman and his plot? So too, women as well. Also, he wanted to kill the men, women, and children. So women were saved also. Think about that in the background. Okay, let's get some impressions over here. What would you say off the bat, guys? Number one, can women be motzi men in the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah? What do you guys think? Let's get some thumbs up. Thumbs up if you think women can. No one thinks so.
No.
Lloyd thinks so. Jake thinks so. I love how it's the men who think that the women could be motzi the men, and the women who are saying we can't do it. We got some really firm women. I remember one time I went on Torah tours when I was in YU in college, and it was 3 guys, 3 girls. It's usually how it goes. Actually, it's not usually how it goes. Usually, for some reason, there's a disproportionate amount of girls that want to go as opposed to boys. As with many things, like in general in life, for volunteering and whatnot, that's what I found. Not a good asham. We have many men, many women volunteering. So I remember I was going to give a shiur. One of my male friends was going to give a shiur, but none of the females in our group wanted to give a shiur. And so we were encouraging them, maybe you should speak. I'm sure they'd love to hear a woman give a shiur also. And they were we were more feminist than they were. They're like, no, we're fine, kind of just hanging around the kitchen and you guys taking care of all the Torah. That's basically what they said. So
Anyway,
it was kind of funny, seeing like we were trying to encourage them more than they cared to, which is important also. Sometimes people, there's this push in some non-Orthodox movements to say, well, women are equally obligated mitzvos as men are nowadays. But there are a lot of women, you guys can tell me, I'm sure, that don't want to have to be chayiv to go to minyan every day. That don't want to have to be chayiv, that they have to make sure to get tefillin every single day. So it's not just can I do it; it's a responsibility. So that's just a little bit of observation. Okay.
You'll remember that 2 or 3 weeks ago I said I could think of 2 reasons why women can't lane for men.
Yes, and you were having 2 reasons that we will mention, but you can remind us, Sadie, because we're going to get to them.
Okay. The first one, in no particular order, is that it has a trump, which means singing. And women,
I said Trump at first. Trump.
Yeah, no, not Donald Trump. And women singing is stimulating to men. Also, it's embarrassment for men that there isn't a man who can lane and a woman has to do it for him.
Excellent. Both those reasons, the consideration of Kol Isha, as well as what we're going to see is called Zila Behu Milsa. We will get to those. So Zadie or Mechami to 2 opinions in Rishonim. Both are on the books. Okay, great. Any other ha'aros before we go forward? Any reasons why women can't be motzi men? Or, okay, let me ask the next question. Can women be motzi women in Mikra Megillah? So Marina, you're nodding your head. We get a full thumbs up from Marina.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Who else is saying yes other than Marina?
Phyllis.
Gloria, Phyllis.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you make the argument. Why can women be motzi women but can't be motzi men? I may have given away a little bit of it, but
Because we are on the same level.
well, what's to distinguish? What's this mean? Different levels? Like you're either chayiv in something, you're not chayiv.
The same level of obligation, and no problem with Kol Isha, and why not?
Very good. So Zadie, to your point about
no,
Kol Isha,
no embarrassing because we're kind of equal. So
So good. So actually, interestingly, we're going to see an opinion that says maybe even for women also, it might be, I don't know if embarrassing is the right word. I'm trying to think, but it's called Zila Bahu Milsa. We'll try to translate it a little bit more precisely. But
There should be a man available to lane for women.
there should be. Baruch Hashem, at a good Hashem, we do. That's usually Nat Sandberg, who like lanes at least 8 times over the course of, as well as other people, I believe, who.
But sometimes we have women Megillah readings for like bat
Yes,
mitzvah.
Yeah. So we also have women's
We
tefillah
have
groups.
women's Megillah readings just for women Megillah reading. We have it.
Yes, yeah,
Whether
yeah.
or not it's the right thing, I don't know. but-
Not usually does
that's
for
what we're going to
daytime.
explore
We have it
tonight.
at night.
You know, it's like when we did the, it's like when I was either really courageous or really stupid when I decided to do a Monday night shear on open parking lots on Shabbos. So it's going to be one of those topics tonight. Maybe a little bit less controversial. I'm not sure. Anyway, let's get to the sources, Rabosai. Let's get to the sources. Let me share the screen. Okay, and then I'll elaborate a little bit, and then I'll take some questions when we pause. Okay.
Isn't the whole question, all these questions based on, is a woman obligated? The woman is obligated in hearing the mitzvah, but was she part of the mitzvah or not?
Interesting. So good. I want to tie those together at the end of the shear, Phil. So I like the direction you're going in. That's going to be my grand conclusion. So we'll hold off on that. Okay. So let's take a look at a parallel Gemara in Erechin. Hakol chayav b'mikra Megillah. Everyone is chayiv in mikra Megillah. Hakol ksherin lekros in Megillah, and everybody is kosher for reading the Megillah. The Gemara asks, "Lasuye mai." What's that statement of everyone's kosher to read the Megillah come to include? La'asuye nashim, to include women who can read as well. And we quote the same rabbi, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Damar Yeshua ben Levi, nashim chayos mikra Megillah sha'avin hayibah oso anes. So this Gemara seems a little bit more explicit. This Gemara says basically explicitly, it would seem, that women are kosher to read. And therefore, you look at Rashi on the spot right here in source number 3. Rashi says, yeah, ein hachinami. Shechayavos b'mikra, nashim, to include women, shechayavos b'mikra Megillah, said since they're obligated to read Megillah, uksheros like rosa, lahotzi zecharim yedei chovasam. So women are able to include men when they read. They could be motzi men in the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah, according to Rashi. And now the issue is Rashi is not a halachic commentary. There is a shulas of Rashi, but generally you don't paskin, we don't often paskin like a Rashi commenting on the Gemara. It's more of a commentary than a halachic work. But don't take it from Rashi. It would seem that Rambam also believes that women, at least me'ikar hadin, are able to be motzi men. How so? You look over here in source number 4. Kriyas HaMegillah Bizmana Mitzvah B'divrei Sofrim. Okay, we know this from learning Maseches Megillah on Thursday nights that Megillah was instituted rabbinically. Is it a higher level of Divrei Kabbalah? We'll leave that for another time. V'advar miyudum shi takanas hanaviyim, right? So he says takanas hanaviyim. V'akol chayavim b'kriyasa anashim v'nashim v'gerim v'avadim mishuchrarim, and everyone is obligated to read it. Men, women, converts, serve and freed slaves. So everyone is able to read. And and then separate category, we teach children to read as well, or to hear the reading. So if you look at Rambam, he puts men and women in the same category. Now he doesn't say it as explicitly as black and white as Rashi, but you know, Rambam was definitely not a feminist. I mean, basically no one in rabbinic literature is a feminist, by what, at least what you would call it today. But you know, Rambam was the one who famously writes that women shouldn't leave their homes more than once or twice a month. So yeah, definitely he's very from. But Rambam would seem to indicate that men and women are in the same category, which would imply, like Rashi says, women can include men, men can include women. You know, You don't need just a women's Megillah reading. The women can be the chazanit, and all the men can be sitting down and listening to her lane, if you just look at these two sources. Now, I remember at the beginning of this year, when I asked if women can be motzi men, everyone put thumbs down resolutely. So you are correct. Halacha l'maisa, you're not going to see that in Orthodox shul. But it's definitely worth noting that there is this minority opinion out there that at least maybe may ikar din on a fully basic legalistic level, women should be able to be motzi men. Now, maybe we'll talk about maybe why publicly it might be problematic for reasons that Zadie, Marina, that you guys began to mention, but it definitely seems, here's a good nafkamina. If I don't know how to lay Megillah, but my wife knows how to lay Megillah, and we can't make it to shul, can't she read Megillah for me, and I'll be yotze with her? That's a good nafkamina there. Okay, so already one surprising shita. Nonetheless, we're going to take a look at Tosfos here in Megillah. So Tosfos starts off, he quotes the opinion that we know from Rashi, he quotes the Gemara in Erchin, and he says, that women are able to include men in their obligation. However, he then asks a question on this. You see, if all I was looking at was the Gemara in Erchin, I would walk away with the impression that women can be motzi men. However, there's a contradiction from a Tosefta. Now, Tosefta is important. Tosefta is a collection of brisos, which precede the Talmud historically. So if I have a passage in the Talmud, in the Gemara, I have a passage in a Tosefta, I may be tempted to give more weight to what the Tosefta were to tell me. So what's the Tosefta say? Tani behedya, the tumtum ein motziin lo es mino v'lo she'ein mino, the androgynos motzias mino ve'ein motzias she'ein mino. So an androgynous is an individual who has both male and female genitalia. Because of this, he has a questionable status. It's not that he's like a new gender, but he has a questionable status of how we relate to him. So an androgynous who actually has male qualities can still only be motzi another androgynous. However, upshita d'lo adifa isha mi androgynous. Certainly a woman which doesn't have any masculine qualities, as we learned in our sisterhood shir, certainly she is no better than an androgynous. An androgynous can't be motzi a man, even though he has masculine qualities. Kal v'chomer, a woman can't be motzi a man. And you know what? Because of this question, v'chein pasku, that's a typo over there. It should say bahag, I think. The halachas gedolos. So v'chein pasku, the bahag, the isha motzi mina avolo anashim. So the Baal Halachas Gedolos writes that indeed women cannot be motzi men. And why? Now, how does he interpret the Gemara then in Erchin? The Gemara in Erchin implied that women are able to be motzi men. So he says, no, this is how you have to read the Gemara in Erchin, looking back at source 3. Hakol chayav mikra Megillah, and hakol ksherin likros Megillah. Everyone's kosher to read the Megillah. But when it says Lasui Nashim to include women, that women are able to read the Megillah, it doesn't mean women are able to read the Megillah for men. It means they're able to read the Megillah for their own kind, for fellow women. That's how the Bahag would read that passage in the Gemara. And why? This is the important line over here. Kamash Mulan de Chayavin da kol Chayavin bishmiya avadim nashim getanim. What's the nature of a woman's obligation? Men are obligated in kriya, in reading, whereas women, their obligation is not to read the Megillah, but is shmiya, is listening to the Megillah. Now there might be some hashkafic ideas behind here as well, but this reminds me of a comment a lot of people made at YU. The men's campus has their student papers called the YU Commentator, and the women's campus is called the YU Observer. You ever think about that? So it's kind of like the mitzvah of Megillah, of course. The men are supposed to be talking and commenting. The women are supposed to observe and listen to the Megillah being laid. That's what the Bahag is seemingly saying. So let me scroll down over here just so we're keeping score. I had a hard time keeping track of everything, so I actually made a little bit of a handy table over here. So I'm happy to send this to you afterwards. So 2 questions. Can women read for men and can they read for women? So our first opinion is the school of Rashi, Rambam, and the first opinion recorded in Tosos that we glossed over. Their answer is yes across the board. Women are obligated just like men are. There's no such thing as multiple levels of obligation. You're either chayiv in the mitzvah sukkah or you're not chayiv in the mitzvah sukkah. You're either chayiv in shofar, you're not chayiv in shofar. Women are not chayiv in shofar. It's a long-standing minhag that women will go anyway, but they're not chayiv in a me'ikar din. It's a time-bound mitzvah. So that's very easy. Yes, across the board. But what we just looked at is the Bahag, the Ba'alachos Gedolos, quoted in our Tosas Megillah, who says that while women are able to be motzi other women because they share the same level of obligation of shmiyah, of listening, nonetheless, the implication is that certainly they cannot be motzi they cannot be motzi men in the mitzvah because men have a higher level of obligation than women do. Now, by the way, we're going to see this a little later. There are those who say that if this whole distinction between men and women is that men read and women don't read, they just listen, then there's actually logical grounds to say that women can't actually be motzi other women. That's not what the Bahag is saying, but some take this idea a step further because it's like if a non-Jew reads the Megillah, it's true that he might be trained in reading biblical Hebrew and is able to read the Megillah and reads it nicely, but I'm not yotze by listening to a Gentile read the Megillah. Why? Because his voice, it doesn't have a Shem Mikra Megillah. It doesn't have a status of this is a halachically recognized Mikra Megillah. So if women only have the power to listen, but don't have the power to produce a kriya, a reading, there's actually grounds to say, this is not the mainstream opinion, but I think where Soloveitchik may have even held like this, that women can't lane for fellow women because they can only listen. They can't produce a halakhically recognized kriya, a halakhically recognized reading of the Megillah. That's not what the Bahag is saying, but that some do take it the next step.
Rabbi, isn't your example with a non-Jew sort of putting the cart before the horse? Like, why isn't it a Jewish or a halachic or like, why not?
I mean, what, like, in Achinami, a non-Jew should be able to read Megillah also, right?
Yeah. I
So
mean,
it's the same reason why if a non-Jew makes Kiddush, or a non-Jew blows a shofar, or a non-Jew does lanes Kriyas HaTorah, it's very nice that maybe they're considering converting. It's nice that they want to become a part of our heritage, but this is just a general principle across all of halacha. You need to be obligated in that mitzvah. Otherwise, if a computer, why can't I just listen to a recording of Mikra Megillah online? That's not called a kriya. There are certain parameters, there's certain requirements for something to be considered a halachically recognized kriya, just like shofar blowing as well, just like making kiddush, just like making any bracha. It works like that as well. So it's a good question. And this is just a general overarching principle in halacha. And Megillah here is just one manifestation of that. But I'm glad that you asked me to clarify that, because that's a good point. Any other questions before we go forward? Okay, because we still got stuff to cover, so I'm excited. Now, okay. So this begs the question. This seems kind of like convenient, no? Yeah, especially for those who don't want women to be laning for men, maybe for preconceived notions. It sounds a little bit convenient to read the Gemara as, women are obligated, but they're not as obligated as men are. Well, what's the rationale to distinguish between them? I mean, again, we'll get to this soon. Maybe you could say general tznius, but what's the rationale to say women are only obligated? You could just say women are not as obligated. What's this mean that they're obligated only in Shmiya and listening? What's the rationale that they're only obligated in Shmiya? So I'll give you two. One from the Avnei Nezer. These are both Achronim. The Avnei Nezer says that when we read the Megillah, we are fulfilling two mitzvos. One is the mitzvah of Persumei Nisa, publicizing the miracle of Purim. Check. Men and women are both obligated to publicize the miracle of Purim. But remember how we just spent, 2 to 3 shiurim learning about the mitzvah of Mechias Amalek, of wiping out Amalek? Well, women are not obligated in a mitzvah of Mechias Amalek. Why? The same way the Chinuch writes, women are not obligated to go out to war in general. Maybe they support the war effort on the side, the Radvaz writes, but women are not obligated to serve in the military. And in fact, as we learned in our Lo Yilvash year, it's actually usher for women to serve, at very least in combat units in the military. So since part of reading the Megillah is part of Zechira, of the mitzvah Zachor, of remembering Amalek, and women do not have a part in that, therefore, women only have the publicizing the miracle part, but not the mitzvah of Zechira. Now, I have a little bit of a question on this, and maybe I just don't fully understand. One moment,
I
please.
understand we don't have the obligation.
Sorry, just one moment. I'll just finish formulating it. So it might make sense on the one hand to say that, yes, this is a valid distinction, but I would say it should really be lehepach. I would say if all you had was a mitzvah of Zechira, let's say it was the flip, it was the opposite. All women are obligated is in the Zechira. So then, okay, Zachor, I don't need to say anything. I just listen, I remember. But if the mitzvah is to actively be mefarsing the nace, which women are, I would think reading the Megillah is what correlates to publicizing the miracle. So I don't fully understand Avnei Nezer. I would say it should be lehepach. It should be the opposite. Someone was trying to raise a question before. Who was?
And I was just going to clarify, because you seem to say that women don't have the obligation to remember Amalek, but they do.
It's machlokas.
Women have to go to hear Parsha Zachor.
Well, it's similar to shofar in the sense that women will go anyway because there is a minority opinion that women are obligated in Zachor. But the Chinuch writes, and this is the opinion of many Rishonim, if I'm not mistaken, is that the mitzvah of remembering Amalek, why do we remember Amalek? Because we remember Amalek to wipe out Amalek. And who's obligated in going out to war to wipe out Amalek? Only the men, not the women. So there's actually a strong basis to say that women are not obligated in the mitzvah of Zachor, but because out of deference to the opinion, it says that they are, and also, I guess it's just a great way to get people into control anyway, women do come for the mitzvah of Zachor. I highly encourage you to come for Zachor. But just to be fully honest out there, that's the basis for it. Okay, one other reason which resonated with me a little bit more is the Kehillas Yaakov, the Stipler. Again, we're in 20th century here. So the Stipler writes in Kehillas Yaakov, a beloved work on the Talmud for, it's a staple of any yeshiva learning. So he says, why can women not exempt men? Why can't women be motzi men? The ikar mitzvahs halal hu kriya. So baseline, men and women both share the obligation of Persumei Nisa, of publicizing the miracle of Purim. And that's the first tier. But only men have the mitzvah of Hallel, of singing Hallel. And what's Hallel? The way you accomplish Hallel is on Purim. You guys ever wonder, pop quiz, do we say Hallel on Purim?
Yes.
It's
No.
both. Yeah, it's yes and no. We don't say what we typically call Hallel in the liturgy, but we have the Megillah.
Megillah itself like Hallel.
Exactly. One of the answers given is that the Megillah itself is the Hallel. And just like only men would be obligated in saying the Hallel, So only men are obligated in the reading of the Megillah. And that's what gives them a higher level of responsibility, an additional layer of obligation. And women would not be able to be motzi men because men have an additional layer of obligation that they do not share with women in this respect. So that's the Kilas Yaakov's understanding. Both different reasons for how to understand the Bahag, why to differentiate between men and women. It's not just I'm either chayiv or I'm not chayiv, but there's different levels of chayiv. You know what it reminds me of? The Beis HaLevi on this past week's Parsha, on Mishpatim. The Beis HaLevi talks about Nasa v'Nishma and how there's two kinds of Torah learning. There's Torah learning where I learn so I know how to be Nasa, so I know what to do. I learn halacha l'maisa, aliba dehilchasa, and then there's an additional layer, which is I learn Torah not just so I know what to do, so I know am I allowed to put something back on the plata on Shabbos, is it considered bishul, but also I do it lishma, just for the sake of learning. So only men are obligated to do the second layer, lishma. Women are only obligated in the first level of learning halacha l'maisa, to know what they need to do. Nonetheless, like many mitzvos that women are not obligated in, they're certainly allowed to volunteer. So a shir like this, I know, is more halacha l'maisa, is more practical. But not every shir I give is so practical. I try to keep them somewhat practical, but like learning the Gemara shir on Thursday nights, we will find practical things. Some shir, there won't be any practical takeaways for our day-to-day lives or Purim. But nonetheless, one's allowed to volunteer to learn, and it's a wonderful thing. Okay, so going back to the sheet. Here we go. Zadie, we're going to get to your reason now. You should get very excited. We're getting to your reason now. The Gemara Masechah Sukkah, which says that if a man doesn't know how to say a blessing and a woman needs to do it for him, tavo me'era la'adam she'ishto banav mevarchen lo. A curse should come upon a man who his wife or children need to include him in their blessing because he does not know how to do it. And the lashon, the language that Tosfos uses, is mishum the rabbim zilu behu milsa, which means it's a shvacha maisa. I realize that translating it to Yiddish doesn't really help. It's a shvacha. I'm trying to give a good translation for zila behu milsa. It's it's an embarrassing
a sad
thing.
commentary.
What was that?
A sad commentary.
A sad commentary. Yeah. Okay. However you want to put it, but. Do you guys get what I mean contextually? I can't get a good translation. It's zila b'hu milsa. It's dishonorable. Maybe that's the best way. It's dishonorable for a man to need someone else who generally has lesser obligations to say the brachos for him. That's one understanding. So that's zila b'hu milsa. Now zila b'hu milsa. The question is, what is shvach? What's problematic about this? So. One understanding is just because they lack the knowledge, but another understanding, I believe it's mentioned in the Kolbo, but I just quoted from the Sefer HaOros here, it's more recent. He asked the following question. Wait a minute. Why is it that on Purim, we're having an entire shiur about whether women can lane for men, but on Chanukah, women are always lighting. If the husband's not getting back until 2 a.m. in the morning from his law job or it's tax season as an accountant and he hasn't gotten back yet from work, so his wife can light for him. Why is it when it comes to Purim we make a whole big deal about it and Chanukah we don't? What's the concern? Mishum pritzusa. What do we mean by pritzus? A pritzus usually refers to promiscuity and to breaches and sneas. Kigon sha'amru gabe zimun, just like we said in halachos of making a zimun, the nashim mizanos atzman, that when women have a meal on their own, they can make their own zimun. Va'avad mizana atzman, and servants, when they have their own meal, they can make their own zimun. Aval lo nashim va'avad mishum pritzusa, but the women and the servants cannot have a meal together. They should not be making a zimun together because it's pritzus for them to be dining together to begin with. When we say that a woman can make a blessing for her husband if necessary, notice it says libaila, for her husband, not for other men. Dafka lebayla. Avolola inishtama. Why not for other men? Misha pritzusa. Because this is pritzis for her to do it for other men. Sure, Amru, Zaidi, this is it. Kol beisha erva. Because this would be an infraction of a woman's voice constituting erva. Now, interestingly, and not everyone agrees with this, some limit kol beisha erva to singing only. But if you look in the Gemara, when it says kol beisha erva, it doesn't say the singing of women is considered erva. It says the voice of women is considered erva. So there are some who are of the opinion that women public speaking also violates kol beisha erva. As you probably have guessed, that's not our minhag here at Agudah Shalom. We probably have a number of chumras to consider taking on first before going there. I don't think our plan's ever to go there. Don't worry, I'm not pushing that. But yeah.
I saw there was an article in the New York Post today about this Chabad rabbi who visited he was depicted and come from away, but he won't go to see it because he said he can't go to see women sing.
Not surprised. I mean, what was this event?
Huh?
Wait, sorry, what was the event?
Well, no, I mean, he's depicted in Come From Away,
Broadway
which is a
show.
Broadway show.
Oh, I mean,
But he
many from.
Now, he didn't
many-
say hear women sing, he said see women sing.
Okay, good.
I was
Question
astounded.
whether it's live, isn't it? That's.
Well, there's a few things.
live,
One
but I
is
think
one
it's
is live versus recorded might be a factor. So this is
But it's
actually
not.
my personal position is as follows. You see, something that bothers me always is that there are people who are just machmir and there are people who are just makel. People who are just strict and people who are just lenient, but they're not consistent. So this is a great example of that. If you hold that listening to Megillah laned over Zoom counts as hearing Megillah, meaning what's the logic? Because you're hearing the person's voice. We don't say, oh, it's through a medium of electronics and machine. Like if you actually consider the voice coming out of the computer, you're listening to my voice now, actually my voice for halachic purposes, that I can be motzi Megillah, then also hearing a woman's voice singing through the computer is no different than hearing it live.
But what bothers me is he said-
one moment, please. I personally hold that you cannot be. I don't think it makes sense. What you're hearing come out of a computer or even a microphone is not my voice. It is my voice. It went into something, and then a machine fabricates my voice to the best of its ability. But I don't think that's a voice halachically. But happens to be because I'm machmer on that when it comes to something like Mikra Megillah or brachos that you need to be motzi somebody in. I also happen to hold that one is allowed to listen to Kol Isha through a recorder, assuming it's appropriate music. Now, Susan.
What confused me about this, and first of all, let's assume that the theater is mic'd. I think in opera it's not, but let's assume the theater is mic'd. He said he couldn't see her sing.
Yes, I'll tell you what. So Rav Ovadia Yosef, I think there's a story about this with Rav Ovadia Yosef, who said, I hope I'm not misquoting, that if you don't know what the woman looks like, you're allowed to listen. But once you know what she looks like, then you're visualizing her,
Wow.
so then you're not allowed to listen. So I think that might have to do with it, Susan.
Okay, because I was very confused.
Yeah. But or you can just follow the mainstream unorthodox approach, which is we ignore halacha exists altogether.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Rabbi,
Yes.
does this all mean that a bat mitzvah of a female cannot be the Megillah on Purim? I mean, I know of several authors
Oh, okay, that's a good question.
who have had their daughters bat mitzvah on Purim, and the bat mitzvah did the Megillah. So now
Were they
where
all
does
women's
that fit
women's
into this?
services?
Pardon me?
Were they all women's services for the bat mitzvah?
No, they
Okay.
were mixed services.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the
So-
men and women sat separately, but it was an Orthodox service.
Then there's a very good. I'm not going to give you the answer because the sources speak for themselves. But I'll summarize what the sources say. According to a very minority opinion, which basically no one passes like, they could. According to the vast majority of Rishonim and Achronim, women can't be motzi men. So I don't want to say unequivocally that they did not fulfill the mitzvah of Megillah that year, but what I could say descriptive, this is not my opinion, this is me being descriptive, okay? Descriptively speaking, there is a very small minority opinion that says a man would fulfill a mitzvah by listening to a woman, and then there's everybody else who says they would not.
So here's
Yeah.
one thing. So supposing that the men had a separate service before or after the bat mitzvah laned, and she was mic'd.
So now we got two issues. We got a woman laning and on a microphone.
Right. No, but the guys are having a separate service so that they're Yotze.
So who's listening?
Well, they also are listening to her at a different time. They have the
Oh,
service.
so you're saying like they just want to be there to support the family.
Yeah.
So good. So this is a great nafkamina, Susan. So if they fill their obligation, but still, if you hold it's kol isha, which again, this actually there's more basis of leniency because is laning considered singing? Well, on the one hand, it's not typically, most people, I mean, sometimes I'll listen to like Eichler or something for entertainment, but most people don't listen to laning for entertainment purposes. But it does have cantillation. It's not just public speaking. There is a tune to it. So it occupies this liminal category of whether it would constitute kol b'isha erva. So that'd be a great example. That'd be a great nafkamina where I fulfill the mitzvah, but there still might be a kol isha issue. By the way, okay, I realize we are at 7:43 and we still have more sources to cover. I'm going to ask that you let me do a run through to the end so we could get all the sources in before. I guess we're going to go an hour tonight. I'm sorry. Maybe I should have done the part 2 on this. But now that we're so far and we got to finish it, I won't be offended if anyone needs to log off, but let me, if you'll allow me to just get to the end of the material, and I'm happy to take the deluge of questions that might flow in afterwards, okay? But excellent questions that you're all raising, and I'm just really, I know it's a sensitive topic because this is practical halacha, but I think that's what makes this very engaging is that this really does have practical ramifications. Okay, so let's go forward. The next issue for women laning isn't kol isha per se. Maybe there's no kol isha issue, but the Magen Avram says dahavi kmo kriyas haTorah. It's the same issue with women laning Torah as well. What's the issue? Well, women actually could lane from the Torah, but they don't b'pnei kavod hatzibor because of the dignity of the congregation. And that opens up a whole Pandora's box, and I do not want to go there, but just this is what it says. It's a Gemara Megillah also that we will get to eventually, not to worry, that women cannot lane for the congregation, not because they can't per se, but they shouldn't because it's an affront to the dignity of the congregation. There's a whole debate today where people say, wait, what do you mean? Can the congregation be mochel, right? Can't the same way the congregation could say, we're mochel davening going over 2 hours on a Shabbos morning because we understand that there's a bar bas mitzvah this Shabbos, and I know when it's going to be my kid up there, I also want them not to rush through it. I also want it to be 2.5 hours. So there's an implicit mechila over. I don't know if that's true. Maybe people don't think that, but that's the logic someone told me, and Simeon Wahlberg told me that logic, and if he's one of the people who I consider to be very careful about timing of tefillah here. So keep that in mind. Reason number 4 is the carbon nisano. The carbon nisano actually is a mix of both, but listen to what he does. What he holds that women cannot be motzi men, and they could be motzi women, but they shouldn't be motzi women. This is unique. Until now, basically everybody's fine with women being motzi women. The only issue is, can they be motzi men? And even if they can, should they be motzi men? But here, the Carbon Nisano says, for men, there's no question. Why? Lahotzi anashim b'lav hachi emotzi, and if you ishal ish echad, even for her husband, she can't. Why? Because they're not obligated. It's not the same level of obligation, like the Bahag said. But what's he do? He takes it a step further. Unlike the Bahag, who said that women can at least be motzi other women, the Carbon Nisano says A woman, she can be motzi another woman, an individual, like her sister or a friend, but she cannot have a public Megillah reading for other women. Why? He takes the reasoning of the zilu behu milsa. It's a shvacha maisa, which again, you have to figure out what that means, but that brings us to all four shias. So quick summary. We have four opinions over here. Can women be motzi, men and women? According to Rashi, Ram, and Tosos, Audrey, this is the shita that you wanted to see, right? Yes, shita number one. But it doesn't let me highlight just this way. Okay, shita number two. Now the rest of these are all non-Audrey Wall-Streicher shitos. We have the Bahag in Tosos. So he says that women can be motzi other women, but cannot be motzi men. Why not? Because women are not obligated in kriya, only in shmiya, only in listening. Then we have the Bahag quoted in Tosos in Maseches Sukkah that we saw, who said that women actually, he takes a step back. Unlike the first version of the Bahag, who says that women cannot be motzi men, the Bahag says women actually could be motzi men. If you hear the woman lane, yes, you are yotze, binti evet. So Audrey, this might also accord ex post facto. You wouldn't set up an event this way, but if you were there, the men were yotze, but they shouldn't because zila behu milsa. What's zila behu milsa? We said either an issue of kol isha, of women's voices, singing, or the dignity of the congregation. But certainly she could be motzi other women. However, the final sheet that we saw, where the Karban Desanel takes Bahag in a completely different direction, the Karban Desanel says that certainly women cannot be motzi men, because again, they're only obligated in shmiya and listening, but they could, but women, they could, but they shouldn't, because zilu milsa. So these are the four opinions that we have amongst the Rishonim that I shared with you this evening. Now, I want to tie this together. You see, are these just like arbitrary opinions where, you just like throw a dart and see where it lands? Are women obligated? Can women be motzi men? Can they be motzi women? We kind of have almost every combination, every permutation over here of what women can or can't do. But what's the rationale? Why might I be more inclined to say that women are equally obligated to men? And what might make me inclined to say that women are not obligated to the same degree as men? So this is where the machshava and the halacha come together, where the philosophy and the legalism fuse. Remember all the way at the beginning, we pointed out that it said, why are women obligated in the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah? Because women were also included in the miracle. What's that mean? What was the women's role? Were they active or were they passive? Were they, like I phrased over here, the heroines or the sidekicks?
Active.
All right. Okay. Well, we got both opinions here. So the Rashbam says, like whoever just spoke, I think it was Phyllis, She'ikar anes hayu al yadan. It's not just simply women were there, that women existed, but women were spearheading the miracles. Women were the ones who orchestrated the miracles. The Purim Aide Esther. Purim, our salvation came through Esther, Queen Esther. The Chanukah Aide Yehudis. Chanukah through Yehudis. And the Pesach Shebeschus Tzidkanio Shebeosa Dor Nigalu, to the women who ensured that men would still produce and they would still have children for generations to come. So women in each of these three stories, the reason women are equally, let's get to that in a moment. The reason women are obligated is because they were on the front lines. They were orchestrating the miracle. However, Tosfos points out that's a nice idea, but it doesn't fit with the language of the Gemara. The language of the Gemara is sha'af hein. What's afhain translate as? Mash v'shein tefelos. Afhain is, they were also there. It's like an afhain. Men were doing everything. Sorry, let me just finish. The men were doing it, but the women, they happened to have been there also. They were tefelos. They were ancillary. So perusha hayol lomar shehain. If you were going to say women were playing an active role, it should say shehain, not she'afhain. Rather, doesn't mean that women were making the nace happen, and that's why they're included in the mitzvah, but because they too were saved just like everybody else. Now, what I want to suggest, and you can let me know your thoughts, and Phyllis, I think this may have been what you were getting to at the beginning of this year. What I want to suggest is that depending on how you see the role of women in the story of Purim might influence to what degree you think they're obligated in. If you think of women as being passive people in the story, the real person orchestrating thing, it was only Mordecai, Esther was just the pawn, it was really only the Maccabees who should get recognized in the story of Hanukkah. It was only Moshe and Aaron who were the real actors in the story of Pesach. So then you might be inclined to say, okay, men are obligated on a higher level than women are because men were bringing about, they were orchestrating the miracle. But if you want to suggest, like the first opinion of the Rashbam, that women weren't just there when the miracle happened. They weren't just, they happened to have been saved also, but they were bringing about the miracle. They were orchestrating it. They were working with God to bring about these miracles. Then it's reasonable, I think, to say that they should share the same level of obligation as men. Because if men were involved in bringing about the salvation, and women also were involved in bringing about the salvation, they should share the same level of chiyuv. But if you say the second opinion of Tosfos, that they weren't, that they were just failures, but the men were doing all the work, then I can see a reason to distinguish between their levels of obligation. So I haven't seen anyone say this anywhere. I'd be surprised if no one else made this connection. I don't think I'm that brilliant to figure this one out. Someone else for sure has thought of it. Phyllis, apparently you did as well. So I'm in good company that I think this might be the machshava behind this. Depending on the role of women you see in the story and in general in life might influence perhaps the degree that halacha would obligate women in this mitzvah. One last opinion I want to share, and then I'll stop for questions, is speaking of, what's the role of women here, I'd be remiss if I didn't share something from Rav Soloveitchik. I always love doing this. I'm just like, I just love, breaking people's assumptions of when they think they know people. So, right, Rav Soloveitchik, we always think as the father of modern Orthodoxy in America. So here I have a passage from Harei Kedem where he says, what's it mean that men are obligated in reading and women are obligated in listening? It's not simply that women have a lower level obligation. He says, V'zeu kavanas habahag v'anosh v'chayavas b'shmiya. It doesn't mean that women are obligated in listening to Megillah. It means that men have an obligation to go out of their way to read for the women. And the women are kind enough to listen to help us fulfill our obligation of being motzi them as well. And that's what the Magen Avram means when he says that a woman should only listen to men lane. Because they're all here just to listen. Their obligation can only exist with the reading of men. And the way the takana was made was dafka for men to read for women. It's not that, really women could lane, but kol isha, but zilu milsa. But actually, Rav Soloveitchik conceptualizes it based on the Bahag. Is that no, specifically the way the takana Megillah was made was for men to lane for the women. Now, this is interesting because for Rav Soloveitchik to reach this conclusion. Because you would say if Rav Soloveitchik was the one promoting women's Talmud Torah, more roles, maybe he would be promoting women being on the same level of obligation as men. And the answer to that is, well, number one, maybe Rav Soloveitchik isn't as progressive as everyone thought. But number two, it also just might not work out. The correlation I'm suggesting might be a nice idea in a shir, but just because you believe that maybe you want to see women be doing more things in Judaism doesn't necessarily translate into you rereading a sugya to fit your preconceived notion of how you want to see things in the world. You may very well promote women's roles, but also read the sugya and be compelled by the Bahag as opposed to the minority opinion of Rashi and the Rambam, possibly. Let me pause here. This is so I'll leave you with that to think about. I'll pause here for questions now.
Rabbi,
Moshe, I think was you said something about Rabbi using the statement about going to see a woman sing. The number one, in English, we go to see a movie, we go to see a play. So that is number one, using the basic English phraseology that we have here in America. But qualitatively, there is a difference in a man's psychology of watching a woman sing live as opposed to listening to recorded rendition. Last night I was listening to a song from a lot of years ago, and I was on Bubby's phone, and there was a still picture of the singer. It was interesting to know what she looked like, but it still is recorded music, and it couldn't possibly have the same effect on me as if I was sitting in an audience watching her sing. The live singing of a woman just affects a man differently than recorded sound, whether he knows what she looks like or not.
Yeah, so that's an interesting distinction. I think, this is an area of halacha where it's based on subjectivity. But what Chazal try to do and what poskim try to do is they try to make broad assumptions about how most people think about something. So it could vary from person to person, but certainly I would imagine seeing a person live in general in any situation is different than just seeing a still picture of them. So I think it's a reasonable distinction.
Also,
Phyllis.
when you're watching a woman sing, if she's moving around the right way, it's sensual.
That's true. That's true, and that's an important area of halacha as well. It's important. Shmir Seinayim is something important. It's something we don't talk about too often. Just Phyllis was waiting, I think, before, but then
Yeah.
Toby.
Oh, and when you analyze the story of Purim, and through the window of the two words you use, Nasev and Nishma, I mean, there's no question in my mind anyway that to Esther, you can apply both Nasev and Nishma. She listened to what Mordechai said, but she also acted, whereas he did not. So I would say if anyone was to be really involved in the story of Purim, it would have to be Esther first and Mordechai second. That's my thinking.
So I mean, I think Rashbam would be very sympathetic to your reading, because that seems to be what the Rashbam says. I would say, though, you do see in halakhic literature the sugya of Esther being karka olam, being passive. There's definitely there's a way to construe it both ways. What?
Through who did this happen? I mean, sure, you could say that what Mordechai said, that Hatzalah will come anyway even if you don't go. But she
Right.
actually went. But she went.
Absolutely, and she deserves credit. I guess it depends how much agency you conceptualize Esther having. Do you see her as having her own agency and Mordechai is kind of just advising her on what to do? Or do you see Mordechai, I don't mean to say this in a denigrating way, but Mordechai is like the puppet master and he's moving all the pawns around. So, you could read it both ways, really, I think. And that might be part of what's behind it. Toby.
Two totally different points. I just talking about what you're talking about, Phyllis. I would go back even further. Vashti laid the groundwork for everything. If Vashti hadn't declined to come when Achashverosh told her to come, this whole thing might not have all transpired. So, I mean, women were there at the very, very inception, whether they meant it or not. So I totally agree with that. But just on the Rav's piece, just piqued my interest a little bit here. We always talk about how, men have, are obligated in tefillin and in davening and this and that, whatever, because they need it. Because they need it. The women don't need it. The women are on a higher spiritual plane and so forth. And so what I feel a little bit with what the Rav is saying is that men need to be needed to read it for the women to make sure that they're going to read it themselves.
Very good.
That's
That
good.
is that Extra infinite.
Excellent.
Yeah,
On that note, I have to go to a meeting. See you later, everybody. Thank you.
it's like, that's
Bye.
why I always imagine, you look at shul, who's the decorum in shul and davening, who's showing up. It's like the men need to be told to go to shul because women are better about coming on Shabbos morning anyway. Possibly, or at least davening in general. Take care. What was the first? Oh, Toby made a first point.
Thank you.
About Vashti. So
Yeah.
just there's apparently this movement today where people have non-Orthodox Jews have kind of taken Vashti as a role model, and they're like, yeah, Vashti said no to Achashverosh. Was it Fatima Ein Vashti Amalka? That Vashti refused what the man Ahasuerus said. She smashed the patriarchy. All I'm going to say is, when you have to take someone who's been conceived as the villain, one of the villains in this Purim story for millennia, and then use that person as your mascot from the entire Purim story, it might say a little bit about what your movement's ideology is. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. But I don't think you guys have seen this, but I think it's a very silly thing. We have a wonderful Megillah about a heroine named Esther. I think she's a really good role model. It's kind of funny that you need to use Vashti, who's arguably a villain in the story, who's hardly in there and not the main character, but instead of ignoring Esther and turning Vashti into the protagonist, it's almost satirical. But I'm sure you haven't seen this. You shouldn't know of such things. All right. Audrey,
you, Rabbi.
do you have any questions
you.
left? I want to make sure you walk away clarified.
No, it's fine. It's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you. But what I
Good
try
night.
to do is make sure that we went through all the different opinions. I give a little bit of my own opinion as well, but definitely I try to be descriptive and make sure all opinions are out there. And that way now you have the knowledge and information, and that should enable you to think about this. Yeah.
Rabbi, one final comment. Are there more opinions that you didn't cover? I mean, are there any other opinions here or there?
There might be some that I could have missed, but I'm pretty sure I covered the full range. There might be some exotic opinions out there that I missed that I don't claim to be fully comprehensive. I didn't do a thesis on this. I just sat together one evening and went through the material and put together a shiur. So I can never, this is something for all my shiur. I can never claim to be fully comprehensive on an issue unless I'm doing like a doctorate in it. There might be some exotic shitos out there, but the exotic shitos that I'm missing tend to be more machmir, tend to be more stringent than lenient. We saw the most lenient shita says women can be motzi men. We saw that. It can't get more lenient than that. That is literally the most lenient shita. I'm aware. I don't know. Can you conceive of something being more Megillah? I can. Okay. Very good.
Thank
All
you.
right. Shabbat, everyone.
Are you broadcasting from your house?
I am.
Well, that was great. I had no problem.
Oh, good. Okay. We should be able to learn together
Oh,
for many years in the future. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Well,
Good night.